little bit so that you guys can tell the truth about everything.
The
first part, all lies, and then you gotta tell the truth. So
We can tell the truth anyways.
that's kind of how I see this working. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves, starting with Vincent, and kind of explain, how, like, what your journey was?
Sure, my name is Vincent Alfaro. I came back to school after about 30 years, and Mrs. Long is my first professor I've had. It was a great experience, and I'm just here to give her back something.
All right, Liz.
My name's Liz Ramirez, and I came back to school after like 15 years and 4 kids later and 20 jobs. And I had Miss Long for 73X, and I really liked it. And then, so then I decided to take her 101X. Really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Lee, and I've only ever had Melissa for an English teacher, so all of my classes, once I started, I was sold. I also am a returning student after a million years, maybe, and really enjoying it thus far.
And Lee has also been my pass leader for
Oh,
both
yeah.
73X and for 101AX. So she's experienced, especially the co-requisite, she's experienced it as both a student and as a pass leader. And for those of you who are from other colleges, the pass leader is like a supplemental instruction leader.
Hey, I'm Britt. Kind of the same story. I took like a decade off after high school and worked all over the place seeing what I wanted to do. Ended up I wanted to be back in school, pursuing a degree in English, so here I am. Anytime Melissa needs help, I'm like, sure, why not, you know? I took 73X with Karen Blythe, and then I passed in Von Legacy's class, so pretty cool.
And then Britt also worked as a pass leader for Juan. Just last semester? Was
Yeah,
it your
last
first
semester, and then I'm considering a writing mentor this semester here on campus, so.
Good to know.
All right, so we'll jump into the questions, and I kind of pose it, and if you have an answer, feel free. We don't have, everybody doesn't have to answer every question, and we don't have to always kind of go in order. Why did you choose 101AX, or Britt, in your case, why did you choose 73X?
Mine was a little bit weird. The counselor told me, like, after a decade, you'd be good refreshing. Turns out I didn't need that. So it's probably the counselor's fault. However, at the same time, it was probably the biggest blessing because it got me back into the swing of school after a decade. I excelled in the class, but it was excellent in getting me back in the habit of reading, writing, doing homework, attending class at 8 a.m. when, I hadn't done anything like that for a while, so kind of.
And Vincent, why did you take 101AX?
My counselor had recommended it after viewing my scores. She recommended me starting off with this class, and I just followed her lead.
Yeah, just by what the counselor said. Lee, Liz, did you guys have a different story, or I know you guys.
You conned me into it.
Yeah.
I clearly
Remember, I'm supposed to leave the room.
You just said to be honest.
Okay.
You told me it would be, and it was because I took 73X, so I was kind of used to me, I felt like the 73X was a little bit more help than just taking the regular English. That extra 30, 45 minutes, I honestly accomplished more in that short period of time, just knowing she was there in case I had questions versus if I go home, I'm like, I have a million questions. I don't have time to go to, to office hours. So to me, 101AX just made sense for me from the way I had been in school for a long time. So getting back to the routine took me a long time. And like I said, having that extra time with her for questions, for group, you get to meet a lot of these people, and then you start to like, oh, let me have your number, I'll text you at midnight when you're doing homework, you text me, and that's exactly, I had probably the youngest class, I was the oldest, and I was the only one with children.
That's right.
Yes, so to me, these kids are like up at midnight, and I'm like, oh my, who's that, And then I run to my computer, and I'm like, gonna answer your email, right? And they're like, you always answer our emails. I'm like, you guys please wake me up. But I didn't want to tell them, because I felt bad. They're
You're like the
young.
mama mascot
Yes,
in
I was
class.
like, don't worry, just text me, it doesn't matter. And they're like 1 o'clock. I'm like, okay, that does matter. But they kind of like, you always
That's like another
answer.
day.
Yeah.
Like,
Why are you
I
doing
also
that?
appreciated the format of the class. I think some of the younger students initially going into it, a 3-hour block seems like a long time, but it isn't. Melissa has made the class very engaging, so the part of it where you're doing the back and forth with your teacher goes very fast, and then you do have that block of time with Melissa there or the past leaders there, with computers in front of you, and it feels more regimented, like I have this time, I need to get this done, instead of saying I'll go to a study hall or I'll do it when I get home, or and you have the resources that are right there, and it flies by. There was not a time ever, I think, where I was like, oh, there's 20 more minutes, or to
Just
your
actually-
credit, and yeah.
Actually, it was the opposite. I'm like, what? We gotta go? I'm not even done.
Right, yeah. Trying to race to get something done while
Yeah.
you're there.
All right, what was the response to the class, what was your response to the class after the first day? And for those of you who took 73X first, maybe talk a little bit about your experience that first day of 73X, because the classes are taught so similarly that might have been the stranger experience.
I was scared. She made us memorize every classmate's name. And I was like, I'd sit in front and I'm
There was
like,
a test.
yes. I'm like, okay, what's your name again? I'm like, I'm never gonna remember that. So you always wear hats. The guy with the hat starts with the, and I'm like, why does she want us to know all these people? I'm like, I'm just trying to get through the class. But then you kind of realize, oh, it makes sense. You get into these groups, you get to know these people. You're gonna need their help. They're gonna need your help.
Instead of, hey, hat guy.
Yeah, which would have worked great for me. Yeah, so it really does. The first day, I think she makes it where you're like not afraid. When you walk into her classroom, you're like, hey, how are you? You'll see the same people walking around, and they'll say hi. It really puts you at ease. I really do. The first day is really awesome.
It really broke the ice, made everybody comfortable, more like a family instead of classmates. And when you feel that way, you feel easier to go to anybody and ask a question, which made it easier, a lot easier.
I was surprised at the curriculum. After taking so much time off, I thought it was going to be more structured about and we do that as well, the basics of English, but it was this fantastic reading and these stories and games, and then there were crayons, which made me so excited.
Choices,
Right,
like, you
but-
get to choose a book. What?
Yes, it's engaging, all parts of your brain, which made the other stuff kind of flow easier for me. I was not expecting that, but it was awesome.
They pretty much got it.
All right, maybe you can start with this next one. Was this class what you expected regarding time involved, effort outside of class, difficulty?
For me, yeah. I mean, it is a lot more work than, a standard just regular English class. And it's, for 73X, students are expected pretty much every class, every time they have class, there's homework due. Every single time, not every class, especially beginner level classes like that. So it is a lot of work, but personally, I like a lot of work, So for me, it's what I expected, but I know that some students have like this feeling of being overwhelmed with their work. Like and if they fall 1 or 2 assignments behind, it's really hard for them to catch up. So that's where I noticed like past leaders come in handy, or somebody that's not the teacher, because like they were saying, the class is like a family. The past leader begins to fit into the class like that. And the students are really comfortable going and harassing a past leader to, give them answers, or not give them answers, but help them work through something or understand something, so.
And we told you in the beginning, right, in your class, like, hey, this is the real deal. If you don't stay on top of it, it will set you up to fail instead of succeed. When Melissa says these things are due, get on them and do them. That's why you have that extra time. So there's no excuse, really. We all like to do that. That's human nature, but you know from the beginning that there's a lot of work, but it's not just a class you're taking. You've got a lot of material.
And you miss a day, forget it.
And it's not really difficult work, it's more just busy work, or work that keeps you like I said, it helped me get back into the habit of doing things. And that's kind of the repetition of assignments helps develop that habit if the students are doing these
So reading log.
Yeah, so reading
I
logs.
My first reading log looked like a book. I was like, I gotta write something on that. What do I think about? You know, and I had all these notes on my book, and I'm like, oh my God, how's that gonna? And then I even told her, how come you only give us 2 pages? I write big. That's not fair. And she's like, you can make.
Didn't
two
it help later then? Weren't you so glad?
Yes,
I
it
always
really,
was
and
glad.
then, yeah, and then we'd go back and I'm like, oh, that's why she makes us do reading logs. That makes sense now. Good thing I wrote notes all over my book. Yeah.
My first reading log looked like a book, and my last reading log looked like a book.
Yeah.
And they came
So,
in
like,
handy.
I think
They
the
did
So
come
the
in handy.
dictionary.
And I write like that big, you know. And it was a good experience. There's a lot of little projects that go on at the same time, so you don't get bored on one project. Your mind is all over the place, and that's where I needed to be. It took up a lot of my time, but I enjoyed it, and I was surprised with my outcome, very surprised.
Did you like reading and writing before you took this class, and do you like them more now? What was your experience like with reading and writing before the
I
class?
hated reading, and I hated writing, and now I look forward to the next book. Thank you.
I love writing before, and you killed it. No, I'm just kidding. I love writing, but you know, okay, so like I said, it was 10 years, and you know, I help my children with their homework, which it is, my kids go to an academy, so it is a little bit more active than, you know, normal. It's not, but I thought I was a good writer. In high school, I had a poem and a story published, and then I went to realize that coming to college, you do not know how to write. You really do not. It's not, you know, an introduction, the body, and the conclusion. It's just like, it's crazy, like how much more you can create out of something, you know, out of reading one book. Even the reading logs, you read, but do you really understand? When you do the reading log, you read it, you understand it, and you remember so much of it. Because then we go back and do like, okay, you know, based on the 2 books that you read at the beginning, comparing them to your 3rd book, I'm like, oh, I remember because I did a structured reading log, you know, so you kind of, it stays with you. And I hated reading before, and I'm like, oh, I would look at the front page and look at the back page, and I'm like, why are we reading 547 pages?
I got this.
Yeah, and then I'm like, page 1, you know, but then it's like, it was always like, oh, okay, you know, they were good books. They were like interesting books. Like they weren't just basic, you know, how to write books. They were good literature books. So I liked it.
All right, so what sorts of, it's a good follow-up question, what sorts of readings appealed to you? Which ones impacted you the most? So are there any that stand out to you that you really, really enjoyed?
I'm trying to remember, was it The Source of Happiness, the black book? Like, I think
The Secrets of
The
Happiness.
Secrets of Happiness, which the class that I was in at the time, it was not the standout favorite, but I enjoyed it because it was kind of a conglomeration of lots of little short stories, but that had a lot of depth. And it was one of those that you really had to sit down and read. You couldn't gloss over it, because I'm a glosser. I'm fast. I go too fast. Melissa's told me several times, slow down. I want to get it all done, and there's a lot going on. And it kind of taught me how to slow down and take little chunks of it and be able to take what was the craziness that's going on up here and put it into a format that other people could read and understand.
And The Secrets of Happiness is where the utilitarian chapter came from, the one that you read last night.
I got it. I kept it.
Good.
Yeah, I
It is
just have all
mine
my
now.
books with me too.
What fascinated me was how she gave us different texts to read and different difficulties in each one of those texts. And she went from an easy text to a thick text. When we went back to that easy text, it was like
What was your easy one? Like
the
Gretchen
Happiness
Rubin
Project,
one?
yeah. And then we went
And
to
I
like
love that
the
book.
Secrets
Yeah.
of Happiness or the Death of Ivan Ilyich.
Right.
And then you go back to the other readings, and it's like night and day. And you just go through it, and it's easier to retain. I thought that was amazing. And I've never had that experience, and we owe that to Ms. Long. Thank you.
Very nice.
I liked opening Skinner's box. In my 73X class, we went through the whole thing, and it's just, I kind of like the human mind and seeing how people work, and like the basis of all of these experiments along with the narrative that Slater provides just kind of, makes it make sense. It's not so scientific, but at the same time it is, and you can really apply it to a lot of your real life experiences or something like that. So I think Skinner's was pretty cool.
What was your least favorite?
That one's not that interesting either. There's valuable things in it, but it's just kind of dry reading.
I think that was a literature circle book in one of the classes I was a past leader for, and they weren't super excited about it either.
It's okay. I mean, like, it has some really valuable things, some really great science behind some of, the habit loop and all of this. It's just.
Although after reading Lighting Up, I was like, I am normal. This lady has issues, and I am as normal as they come. And I reread some of the stuff again, and I'm like, yep, she still has issues.
That was your least favorite?
It wasn't my least favorite, but it was like not something I would go back, and like, I have Drive. I like.
You like Drive?
I'm like,
Lighting Up is one of the literature circle choices. So it's the woman who stopped smoking, drinking,
everything but sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
She gave up everything but sex that was bad for her. Vincent,
Yeah,
what was
but-
your least favorite book or text? If you had to
your
choose.
literature circle ones?
I don't think I had a least favorite.
Okay.
They were all very interesting to me.
Let's see. Maybe I'll save this one for when I leave and then you can answer honestly, but did you do all of the readings?
Of course. Of course, I had to pass.
my brain set already, right?
War of the Worlds, I really had to apply myself to sit down to read that. It just didn't.
To be fair, that was in the literature class.
Yeah, that wasn't it, and it was not my favorite, and I had to kind of make myself sit down, but the rest, I wanted to.
Yeah. I'm kind of nerdy and I do all my homework, so.
So one of the things I was explaining about a student panel that's difficult is we get usually the students who do well in the class are the ones who want to volunteer to do the student panel. So I kind of want to ask you to think about your classmates. Do you think that the majority of the students did all the readings in the class?
No.
You don't think in yours?
No. Yes and no. It was just a struggle to get
In
them.
the 73X class?
Mine.
Oh, in
Yeah,
yours.
it was a small class, and it was just a different group of people where they struggled to lift each other up, which is a lot of what the 73X class does. They really struggled to bond in that way that, like in my 73X, or from what I hear about your guys' 101 or 73, it was just a really strange, small group of people, and once
Did
they felt,
start to finish, or did they drop out?
most
that
of
was
them
our
start
part.
to finish.
Our thing
And
was
they just
we
didn't
dropped
do it.
out.
They were
Yeah.
like, I know that I'm taking an F, but please don't drop me, and it was really, really strange. I've never seen this in any other class,
Why are you here?
It was just this really odd group of people that had, so no, but it was once they fell behind, they got like 2 or 3 behind, and they're like, oh my gosh, now I have 100 pages to read and 3 reading logs, and I can't do that, so I'm just not going to, and it was hard to motivate them, but they did, a lot of them came back and made up what they could and this and that, but it's easier to do it in the first place and not do it as a
Well, in
makeup.
our 73X, a lot of them were dropping, so I think maybe it's a 73, because
But
I think
of
one of
the
them.
people who made it, who were coming till the end of the semester, so not
Yeah.
those who sort of dropped the class, but of the students who,
A lot of them were not doing their work, and you could tell because when we had that group and you had to do your part, whether it was
The
the
literature
illustration or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't do mine. I'm like, you never do yours. How are you passing? And you kind of start to ask yourself. So we
so in the
did-
73X.
Right.
In the 101X, did you feel like everyone did the reading for the most part?
for the most part, yes. There was like one in our group specifically that you could tell when someone doesn't read, because then you have like, then when you do the questions and they're like, that wasn't in there, and I'm like, no, it was like the very beginning, and then and then you're like, okay, so, and you kind of like encourage them, like, you need to read it, like, how about if we have like, she makes us do something front in the group and we're gonna look at you like, you better have read that, you know?
With our with the students kind of policing themselves, they're held accountable to their peers.
Right.
So it is awkward when you're in the group and it's like, I'm not gonna act like your mom or your teacher, but you're leaving 4 other people hanging, you know?
Yeah.
And it tends to.
And that's true, but for the most part, all the groups you could tell were really good groups, but 73X had just,
And that's probably just it as the
Like sink or
73X
swim.
versus a 101.
Yeah, and it could be
you know?
the particular class.
yeah.
We had the 4 classes and one of the classes maybe we thought, oh, this will be a challenge, and then at the end it was the other class, like, so you just don't know, it's like, what happened here?
It's a matter of how the students mix together a lot of the times.
All right, let's shift gears to the Happiness Project. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more later today about what the Happiness Project, what the prompt looked like and everything. But in my 101AX class, they did a Happiness Project that they created. So one of the questions is, did the Happiness Project give you a better understanding of what happiness is?
Personally, or like as a
Personally.
out
So
there in
did
the
you
universe? Or?
Did you think your Happiness Project was successful in some way?
Absolutely. And I thought, at first, maybe, oh, this is gonna be cheesy, but I'm gonna give it a shot. And then, you really, because you're fine tuning it and catering it to your own personal ideals, you kind of, the things that I thought I was gonna be successful at would make me happy were not at all what ended up, working in the end. I really enjoyed it. I still think about the things that this may sound silly, but to not go to Starbucks every single day and spend $1 million, but it really curtailed my habit, I guess.
Are you back at it?
No, I really
See,
has.
Diet Coke, it's not.
I know. I was, I was trying to save money. Budgeting was one of my things, and I was adding up and keeping track of how much I was spending, and I thought, oh my God, this is not making me happy. This being a consumer for the man.
Liz, Vincent, how'd your Happiness Projects go?
I think mine worked well for me. I could have done some adjusting on mine. But when you fall off and you know you still have that project and you know it's gonna be good for you, you have this guilty feeling that, well, I need to get back to that happiness project because you created it for a reason. And if you don't put it to use, then why'd you create it? So that's what gets me coming back to the happiness project. And it's a good thing for me. It turned out well.
I'm actually still doing most of mine.
Oh, good.
So, because mine was finding a church, and I did. I'm actually now not gonna work. I work weekends, like that is my life. That's all I work because I go to school full time. I have 4 kids and a significant other, and they want attention. It's so weird. And then and I work full time, and I am a full time employee. In 3 days, I put in over 40 hours. So actually, the 23rd will be my last day of work, and I will. And part of it was finding a church group that I can feel comfortable and something I can pursue. And I found them during my happiness project. I went out hunting, like weird status. Like I went to all these things that Porterville does events, and then they have like different church groups, different things for the community.
Scoping church.
Yeah, and I was like, this is so weird. I'm like, I would tell my 13-year-old daughter, get up and go ask them for some information. She's like, why do I always have? I'm like,
Why are you
want
involving me?
I'm like, you want something from McDonald's? She's like, okay, I'm going. But a lot of it, I was working out 5 days a week. Yeah, we're down to 3. It's summer, it's hot, but I'm still sticking to it. The staying more organized, just reorganized, So my project actually, it's still with me, which is weird because that was my favorite. The Happiness Project was my favorite book. And I would try, when I first read it, I was like, this lady's cuckoo. Like, who has 1 minute? What are you gonna do in 1 minute, right? And then I started doing it, and I was like, oh, this is crazy, but you can actually do something. So then I started to implement it as we read the book. I went back to the book when we did the Happiness Project, and I was like, I don't want it to be the same because I have different looks of, what makes me happy. And family time was one because I work in school, and so now, we have dinner together. And
Did you find, I'm going to interrupt you, I apologize, that I had these really grandiose ideas of what happiness should be, and the things that ended up making me the happiest were really simple.
Yeah. like spending
Like,
dinner time together.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, that didn't cost me anything, you know? But
Yeah.
you always have these ideas like,
Which was surprising.
yeah, you know, well, if I buy something nice for myself, it'll make me happy, and I never do that. So then I'm like, that wasn't really it, you know? So I'm sticking through mine. So I hope not to give up anytime soon. Especially the gym part, especially the gym part.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. All right, what was your favorite and least favorite part of the class?
There's a lot of work. I mean, that, I don't even want to say that's the least favorite, because once you start doing it, you realize how it helps you understand and get through, and it all kind of connects. But I mean, there's a lot of work. It's a challenge for me anyways to try to organize my time. That is not my best thing. And so I definitely learned the hard way at first. You know, you don't want to have to do several reading logs the second before you go in. That's just very stressful, anxiety. But what was my favorite part?
Your favorite part?
I was just so surprised at the content. You know, being away from school for so long, I did not expect to be reading things on, you know, Buddhism and challenging yourself to be happier. And I was like, am I in the right class? English? But it was a lovely surprise. I really, I enjoyed it.
My least favorite was realizing I was not really that great of a writer and having to kind of start over in a sense, to learn, I guess, a better way, you know, to express myself.
We're a different kind of writing.
Yeah, different.
Okay.
It was definitely a different kind of writing, but that's okay. You know, once you get into it, you're like, oh, I get this. This makes sense. That, you know, that's why it's structured this way. Especially with some of the prompts, like, you know, this essay or this paragraph should contain certain information, and you're like, but why? And then you read the next part. Oh, that makes sense because it ties into that. Okay, you know, that was like my least favorite, is realizing that. My favorite was honestly.
Coloring.
Yeah, my stick figures that she
Yeah.
misinterpreted.
I love that part.
Do you want to tell the story of the? Yeah, Liz has a pretty funny coloring experience story.
I think she was supposed to be what, in her bed or something, or
It was supposed to be. Is it doing yoga?
oh yeah, it was supposed to be her doing yoga, and it looked like she was in a weird position. She's like she just put a question mark.
It was just difficult to understand what her stick
What are you
figure was
talking about?
doing
You
exactly.
perfectly see that she's doing yoga, and she's like, oh. You see she's doing yoga, and I'm like,
What were you thinking?
Miss Long, I should take you to church with me.
You would drop the crayons off, and the look on everyone's face would be like, what, you know.
The first time.
Yeah, why, what's going on?
I know
here?
when you get your material thing, I'm like, colored colored pencils. I'm like, am I in the right class? I'm like, oh, great. But no, and my favorite was the fact that she implemented us having a group, staying on top of that group, and having each other's back to do everything. Because a lot of them, like I said, would text you, I need help, or I read this, but it doesn't make sense, like, or
What am I reading?
yeah, or
What
yeah,
am I reading?
or how did you start your essay? Like, I don't even know. And then you kind of like, well, let me read you mine. No, that's not how I want to start mine. Okay, so how do you want to start? Oh, that makes sense. Oh,
Did
you
you
know,
guys meet outside of class?
Yes.
Are
all
you
the
talking about your success groups, or are you talking about
all of our groups
Okay,
actually
sure.
became huge groups. Yeah, and we would actually meet at my house because I'm the oldest, so I'm probably the only one that lived.
Snacks.
Yeah, I'm the only one that had snacks and
Dinner.
lived on my own. Yeah, and they're like, "What'd you make to eat?" I'm like, "Come on, let's." You know. But yeah, we all met, and it just became. And we actually in 73X didn't stay with our success group because they started falling out, and it was down to 3 of us. So then we picked up other people. Yeah. So then we picked up other people, and it was just like one big group. And like, my husband's like, "Why do we have like 20 kids?"
There were all these teenagers
Hey,
in my house.
did you adopt more kids? You know, and I'm like, no, you know. But yeah, and then you kind of, that was my favorite part, is getting to know them and seeing how, from different backgrounds, everybody has a different point of view on the exact same reading. It's amazing.
That is
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite is the class discussions, because I tend to be like pretty dogmatic and think I'm right about everything. And so like hearing other people and being like, wait, that's pretty valid.
possible.
Like, hold on. And it kind of gives me like more information to like toss around and kind of really learn instead of just always putting down on paper what I think. Because like I know what I think, you know, think a lot of things. And
And you're always right. which is
yeah, and I'm
awesome.
always right, yeah. So, you know, it's really nice being in a class with people like that do come from different backgrounds, because I am that person who has always excelled in school, and I'm used to people telling me that I did well. So it's kind of cool sometimes for people to be like, no, you're wrong, and me be like,
Yeah.
what? You know, and have to really like evaluate that. So a lot of personal growth can occur in these classrooms, not necessarily just what you're reading in the book, but I think the accelerated classes, because they are structured differently, like can really teach students about themselves, especially in the beginning of their college journey. You know,
Gain
like
confidence.
yeah, like what do I you know, what do I want from school? And that class kind of teaches you, because if you go in and you're like, I'm not doing any of this work, then you can really sit back and be like, do I want to be in school? You know, and then aside from that, all of the literature that each teacher provides or instructor provides, you know, it causes you to look inside and to evaluate like what you do in your own life. These happiness ones, the habit ones, you know, all of them have something to do with your own personal self. So I think I like the personal growth the most. And then as far as not liking stuff, I'm being told that I'm wrong, you know. Same thing.
You liked that.
Vincent, do you have a favorite part and a least favorite part?
Yeah, I think what I really appreciated was the structure, the strict rules, guidelines that you set at the beginning of the semester. Because without that, people are just gonna go everywhere. And they do, even with that, they try to stray out. But the least part I didn't like was the way they did, some of the kids didn't respect that, you know.
Yeah, we had a few in Vincent's class.
Other than that, I liked everything. The only thing I didn't like was procrastinating my work and not getting that deadline at the last minute.
Yeah, that's a good time.
That was my problem.
My brain works better like at midnight when it's due at 8 a.m. Awesome. I'm like waking up from a nap. I'm like, oh my God, my homework.
All right, what strategies from the course have you used in your other classes? Maybe your non-English classes? If anything, I should say.
Probably pre-writing, and like I used to annotate a little bit, but I annotate a little bit more now, you know, than I used to, which helps when I'm going back and doing my writing. But probably just that. I think about the habit stuff a lot, and then I'm like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. I really need that. The structure of the writing, the introduction, the thesis, the body, the conclusion, not saying I, that one. I did that a lot, but yeah, you.
Here we go. I think mine is, I use some of the reading log stuff. When you read other stuff, you kind of start to break down what you read and make your little side notes. I mean, I didn't bust out a whole reading log, although she said I was hoarding them because I would go take
I
extras.
totally hoard them.
You did too? I still have some.
Yeah.
Still use them.
I
make
feel more
photocopies
comfortable
of
having
them.
an extra. Yeah,
I have my own reading log
Yeah.
section at home.
definitely.
But,
We'll shelf for it.
But I did keep that habit of, I would read things and I would want to understand now what I'm reading versus just kind of read it and hope to answer the question correctly kind of a deal. So yeah, that's the one thing I've kept from that.
And then as a parent too, I don't know if you relate, but it kind of, a lot of the strategies, you know, if they were maybe juvenile for me or I had learned past it, it's like a way for me to teach my kids, you know, so become a better parent through the class as well, like honestly, so.
Life skills.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Were you overwhelmed by and I think this probably for the three of you, were you overwhelmed by the overlapping papers and essay assignments that you'd be working on a rough draft of one and final of another and that sort of thing? Was that overwhelming to you?
Yes. It was because you're like reading one book and you're working on one thing and then you started the next book and you're working on another thing and then I'm like, what book did I just read? you know? But I think once you get into the habit of it, and then also a lot of the books had a lot to do with each other, they, you know, so I was like, wait, was that from this book? So then I have to go back, I'm like, go back, you know, and I'm like, oh no, that was the other book, go that, you know, and it is overwhelming, it is, it's a challenging class, but you really get something, and that's the way I came out of it, you really can always, you always have the easy way out of things, there's always that way, there's easier classes to take, but you don't get as much as you really want from them, and that's what I felt with the 101AX, that I really got a lot more, and I felt like it helped me more with other classes, just not just staying organized, but understanding what I'm reading and being able to juggle all that at the same time was, oh, you know, it does, it helps you, you know, but it is overwhelming. If you're not gonna put the time into it, it's gonna be overwhelming.
One of the next questions that's related to that is, did you have to prioritize your time to spend on your time spent on other classes to guarantee your success in your accelerated English class? Basically, did your grades in other classes suffer as a result of this class?
No, mine went up because I was trying to hurry up and do everything else and get it like, okay, I'm gonna do all the homework for this class, so I have time to do all the homework, you know? So I felt like I did better, like I honestly did. I felt like I did better having all that.
Yeah, it teaches you how to prioritize your time and make sure that, you know, I definitely enjoyed my English class the most because that's what I like. But I didn't fall off on anything else. It motivated me probably the same, even more so, to make sure that everything was going to be done as well as the time I was spending on my English class. Even math. I did it.
But you passed.
I know. That's huge. It is.
For me, because it takes me a little longer to get through this material, I had to drop another class, but dedicated solely to your English class because I wanted a better grade in it. I had to learn how to split my time up with everything else that I had going on in my life at the time. But it was doable. As far as being overwhelming, it was, but I look at it as a challenge. I don't stress out about it, you know. I'll tackle that next object when I get to it, and that's the way I looked at it. It was doable. It was.
All right, so kind of looking at the way the class was structured, maybe you could talk to, before you took the class and then after the class, do you enjoy a more interactive class or do you prefer kind of a lecture format?
Interactive.
Interactive, definitely.
Interactive.
100%.
And was that the case before you took the class?
Yes.
Or, okay.
No, before I thought lecture was easier, you know, you kind of, you just go in, get your lecture, get out, you know, but after you're kind of like, it becomes routine, you know, it does.
You don't learn as much?
No, yeah, you don't, then you realize at the end, like, oh, I have like a million questions, oh wow, you
I
know.
don't think I knew that there was any other way.
Way than lecture, right.
I just
That's- yeah.
assumed that's how it was, and it was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, me too, because honestly, when you come to college, you always think, well, didn't go to college straight out of high school, so I thought lectures, you go in, you get what you're gonna get out of it, and you get out. So when she had a very interactive class, I was like, first of all, they're like way younger, I don't feel like I fit in, but then you're like, yeah, and there's markers, there's these crayons, am I supposed to eat them? I don't know. But, you know, so you kind of like, you're kind of like, at first I think kind of everybody's like afraid to really be open, but then you kind of get to know everybody, and then there's like absolutely,
No one
No.
shuts up?
yes, no shame. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I really like the, you know, the fact that everybody kind of comes together in their class. So.
I think that's where you gain a lot more knowledge than just reading the book, you know, because you can have your conversation with your text, but like talking to her and bouncing my ideas off of these people here, it's gonna be a lot more enriching, you know.
And it's
so.
like you're not expected to get the same outcome as everybody else. You know, it's like, here's your material, you have your own interpretation on
Yeah,
it.
there's no wrong,
you know.
like anything, you know, so it's
You
like.
follow the prompt the same as
Mhm.
the person next to you, but, you know, what you get out of it or what you put down on paper is your own, which was cool.
So we have a few questions that are sort of more logistical based, I guess. Do you believe the X portion of the class, so the time for the 101A X portion that we spent in the computer room, do you believe that that class helped you be more successful? And then the second part of the question is just, would you recommend this class to your friends? So that, actually, let's save that second part. So just that second part, or I'm sorry, just that second part of the class when we were in the computer classroom, do you feel like that really helped you to be in the computer classroom?
It did, because having other classes, you kind of like, you're there, you're gonna do what you have to do. And like we were saying, you feel like, oh my God, I'm out of time and I gotta have to finish this, you know? You feel like it's not even long enough because you wanna sit there and finish. I feel like once you've had the first part of it and then you go into the second part, you're like, you're still going, you know, you're still engaged and stuff. As when you leave, you're like, I'm gonna do it later. That's not gonna happen. You know?
Or if you don't have, I forever have technological difficulties with my computer at home. So for me, it was the most convenient to be able to try to get the bullet point work done in the time that I had there, knowing everything was working. If I sent it, it would go through.
Yeah.
I wasn't taking pictures and texting Melissa and having to freak out, you know. And the resources of not only the other students there, but the teacher there and the past leaders as well. So I felt like you had a little warm hug if you needed it.
Not literally. I don't like to be anywhere near.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So did you find that shift though when we would move from the one classroom to the computer classroom? Did you find that at all disruptive?
No, I liked it.
Yeah, I
I'm
think the
like,
opposite,
Yeah.
actually.
I'm like,
Yeah, it was like a little,
Yeah.
okay, wait,
Shower,
you're just like,
refresh.
yeah,
Mhm.
absorbed it a little
I
bit.
didn't even do it, I'm over here answering.
Yeah. You get it though, you know.
because and then you walk with the same people you're gonna sit by, and you're like, hurry up, let's go, what are you gonna work on, you know?
Make
And you
it
kind of have a
fun.
whole plan, by the time you get there, you're like, I have this plan. And then someone asks you a question and interrupts you, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna help you. But you're taking from my time. But yeah, it's really convenient, I think that feels like a break, and then, usually you walk with the people you're gonna be with.
That
and then-
little recharge.
Yeah, and then you're like, I got all these questions for Miss Long when she gets up there, you know? So,
All right, so now let's go back to that second part of the question of, would you recommend this class to your friends?
definitely, I have. Everybody that's, you know, oh, I'm gonna take English, I'm like, you should take it with Melissa Long. I go, it's like, and I tell them, it's not like you're just gonna read and not do nothing, but if you really wanna get something out of it, you are. And they're like, really? I'm like, yes. And you know, and sometimes, like I tell you, there's always an easy way out, but are you gonna get anything out of it that you can use later? Probably not. You know, and they're like, okay, well, you know, I'll try it. I'm like, all right. So, but I've recommended it to so many people. And I tell them, if you haven't came to school, because a lot of the time, you know, when you're older, your people are like, well, how do you feel going back to school?
Billy Madison.
You know, and I tell them, take the 73X first, and it'll kind of wing you into like doing it. Because it was recommended for me too, and I was like, I really felt like I needed it. 10 years of not coming to school and just, you know, working all the time, and you have a different point of view of things after 10 years, you know, and my brain wasn't working as fast as, you know, so I really enjoyed it. Yeah, as a kid, yeah, the 18, 17.
It really works better.
It would-
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, the fresh outlook or interesting outlook. We had the self-addressed envelope that will
Essay
forever
number
stick
one.
with me. Yeah, the kids, like, no one knew how to
Right.
write a letter. The stamp, what side does it go on?
Oh, yeah, I got that
thought,
one.
oh my
They're like,
God,
I got that a lot.
Isn't
Yeah.
that bizarre? You
I
know,
actually
so
had
you
to
guys-
put up a screen that showed an
Yes.
envelope and how you would address the envelope.
Yeah,
where
I
the
thank
stamp
you. I
goes.
was like,
Yeah.
Lord, I just couldn't, I
Yeah.
couldn't call my mom.
But that is kind of the
Don't
cool
even
thing,
think.
you know, like,
Yeah.
super fresh perspective, something
Right.
that, you know, I experienced something, I'm 30, so I was alive during 9/11, but there's people in the class who
Oh,
were
they were
like a year
not
old and
born,
have no
yeah.
concept,
Yeah.
so, you know,
Yeah.
with each, like, generational gap like that, you learn new perspectives and new things, so
Yeah,
it's
as
kind
my
of neat.
8-year-old would say, you were born in the 19s.
Yeah. That's so
So
cute.
shocking.
I would recommend the class to people, only to people that want to succeed.
Mhm.
To those that
If
don't
you're
want
not
to succeed,
serious, it's,
Yeah.
just
If
don't
you're not
involve.
willing to put the effort
Those that
into
want
it.
to succeed and do good, take the class.
Yeah.
Alright. Do you think that this class has prepared you academically in your other classes? And if you want to speak to if you've taken 101B and how well you've done in 101B, that might also be useful.
I
So
like
101B is our advanced literature and composition class. How would we just advance? Yes.
It was pretty cool. I liked 101B. Yeah, like because you get to explore like short stories, poetry. You know, like this plethora of reading that other classes you do get options, but it's like this novel and then this novel. And with all of the short stories and poetry, you're just exposed to a lot. And then the writing that you do in 101B, you know, you compile a poetry anthology, or you do a lot of different styles of writing that, I don't know, just more personal growth, just help you to learn more about yourself too. The prompts make you look inside and what do you believe in, you know, so establishing those ideas of what like one believes in, I think is pretty crucial to like life, you know, so 101B was pretty neat.
I thought so too. I have lost my fear of poetry.
Not me.
Very nervous, didn't even really want to go there because to me it was all going to be like Shakespeare. I was not going to understand it and I was going to feel like I just wasn't up to par, but yeah, completely blew the doors off and made it really exciting to go out and kind of search and resource on my own different authors, and I would kind of tell Melissa like a big dork, like, I'm so excited, have you ever heard that lady? Like, she's so neat. She's like, yeah, I've been around for a while, but for me it's all.
She burst her bubble.
Yeah, I know, she's like, no,
I mean that, but
yeah,
yeah.
It's cool. And the poetry, I mean, like, it gives you confidence too in your own writing, you know? Like, I've written forever, but never for anybody or anything. And in 101B, my instructor, like, convinced me to go and get published and stuff. So it's, like, kind of just like an uplifting, like, kind of place to be, you know, where you're never wrong or, like, nothing's bad. It's all just, like, really cool, you know?
Just learning.
All right. What advice would you give to a future student? So maybe a student who's coming into 101AX. What advice would you give?
Don't miss a day.
Yeah. Do not miss a day and
Stay on top of it.
stay on top of it. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, just don't be intimidated,
Yeah.
right? It sounds like, you
Yeah.
know, if you just,
Yeah, like the first day can be crickets, kind of, you know, at first, and then that falls off pretty quick.
Yeah.
Can I ask Britt a follow-up question sort of related?
what's up?
Yeah, sure.
Well, just, so Britt took 73X, but she did not take 101A, she took just regular 101. So do you feel like, was that because you were already prepared enough, or do you feel like, did you need, do you think you missed something by not taking the X?
Personally, no, but I don't think I'm like every student that comes into college. Like I said, I only took the accelerated because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and my counselor told me to. If I would have known better, I would have immediately went into 101A, just right off the bat. Like I said, it was a good little refresher, and I did learn some things and meet some really cool people. But for me personally, no. However, maybe some other students in my 101A class that I did end up taking, they could have benefited from a little bit of extra work. Or just things that, you know, while you're trying to focus on the composition aspect of it and they're too much like, thesis, what? They could probably like benefit from the accelerated class or a little bit more instruction.
So the last question that I have on here, and then I'll kind of open it up to more questions. Because all of the instructors here are learning how to teach an accelerated class, or what is in an accelerated class, what advice would you give this group? So what advice would you give to someone who is who would be teaching an accelerated class?
Don't get frustrated when your students don't do their work, because you're going to have that moment.
Probably.
It has nothing to do with you, it's them, you know, and you know, not like being in the habit of it, not being in the swing. The first couple weeks can be pretty rough, it seems like, so don't like let it get you down, I guess.
So don't take it personally?
Yeah.
Don't take away the crayons. Keep the drawings on there, no matter how
stuff like that really does, especially in a 3-hour block of a class. Like, we played a lot of different games that were always for team building, or, you know, whoever one didn't have to answer this question today and the other group had to answer more. Something like that, you know, so there was incentive. But making it fun really helps the students to not fall asleep in the 3-hour block, so.
I would say implement the don't miss a day, because I feel like if you don't implement it, or you don't, I guess in a way it's rewarding them if you don't miss a day.
So she's talking about the policy that, it was in the portions for addressing the effective domain, that if you are there for every second of every class, you don't have to take the final, or you don't, like, some kind of a reward for having been there.
Yeah, because trust me, if they're there every single day, and I was there for every single minute for 73X, I missed a day, my dad had surgery one day, so I had to miss one day, but besides that, I was like, if you don't miss a day, you already know these students are getting what they should out of this class.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really honestly care about the final. They've been there every minute. They didn't miss anything. And to me, I think that's important. And it's kind of, maybe it's because it's a younger generation, but they see it as, oh, it's an incentive. Oh, they're bribing me to come. And that's fine. You know what I mean? If that's what you have to do, then to me, that's a good thing. And a lot of professors do, not just for English.
Yeah,
a lot.
other classes I've
Yeah.
had where, like, after 2 classes, every class you miss affects your letter grade.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's strict, to where you can't miss the more than 2 classes, or your grade's going down for
Yeah.
letter grades. Now, that's pretty gnar. I don't know if you want to be jerks like that.
If you lock the doors on them, that's your thing, but no.
Well, and I will say too, and my final is not it's not worth a lot of points. It's not as if the final is really deciding the grade. So Liz, you took the final in 101AX,
Yes.
and so can you speak to, was it a difficult final?
It wasn't. It actually, I took it and I did it and I was done and nobody else was done, so I kind of sat there because I was like,
Why am I done already?
yes. I was like, oh my God, why is nobody else done? These kids are faster than me. I did something wrong. Let's read it
I
again.
mean, didn't it reiterate to you that, oh, I know what I'm doing? Like, that
Well,
wasn't-
yeah, and the only reason I missed was because it was an emergency.
Yeah.
You know, if not, I don't miss class. Like I don't miss any class.
But
Like-
the final really is a kind of, what did you learn in this class? So read this essay and respond to it with everything that you've learned.
And to me, I felt like there was no wrong answer, so I was like, wait, this is a trick. Let me read this again.
You stress, Melissa, the success groups, and, you know, make sure that you really, is it time to get up?
Is there a bomb? Is there a bomb?
Stress to your students that you really use the other students as a touch base, because Melissa isn't always available, and it makes you responsible for asking the student, what did I miss? Now, Melissa always puts up the slides from the day. You could go back and check, but if you have a question, like, am I understanding what I'm reading, to be able to go to your student, and then they can catch you up. Because you know, I'm a single mom with a child, so life stuff happens. You don't. I was excited to be there, but sometimes you just can't. So you know, it is stress to your students that, you know, I'm not your mom, so you need to make sure that you're responsible, and you can go touch base with the other kids in your class, and they can let you know what you missed, and you're fine. You know, you don't miss one day and then it's over. You know, like, don't ever do
Definitely
that.
implement that type of success group thing too, because it seems like for everybody, those success groups are helpful.
Right.
And then I still, a few years into my journey, there's still some of these people that I talk to and
Right.
communicate with. Maybe on more of a friend level than a classroom level now, but
that started
it's a great way to establish, you know, lifelong connections with people who share similar goals as you, so.
Okay, that's true.
And I had a whole group of girls from an unrelated class that were coming to me for English, which was kind of awesome. You know, it's like you're still talking about English and helping them out, but you create that bond, kind of.
I tutored people for their finals this semester and didn't even have time to study for my own. Okay, so
There is that.
great connections.
All right, so I'm going to open it up to questions that maybe it's better if I'm here that you need to ask, if I need to clarify anything. And then if you have any questions, I'm going to go out for a little while and let you ask the questions. But are there any questions you want to ask the panel while I'm still here?
Yeah, mine's kind of a two-part, but it's quick. What was your favorite essay? And should instructors allow late work, or is that kind of like an out for students? Should we have a no late work policy and stick to it? So favorite essay and late work?
I know.
My
We did
favorite
it.
essay, excuse me, my favorite essay was the dinner table discussion.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, the one we just went over? Oh, okay.
I like that people are holding up their dinner party pictures.
Proud of that
I
picture.
thought, okay, because I wasn't sure about that one, I was like, oh, so, okay.
Because even though it's a set essay, everybody has a different character, so different point of view. So it can go like millions of ways, and then you read other people's, and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, that
Well,
makes
it's fun
sense.
for the teacher too, because we're not reading this.
Exactly, yeah, yeah, that's true,
Okay.
because you do get kind of stuck on the same, and it does become the same answer, kind of.
You have a lot of
Yeah.
information to choose from.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of information.
In my 101A, we did a literacy. We could be anything that we wanted to describe the literacy of, from hunting to, I did confidence, so like the literacy of being confident. And I learned in that I'm not as confident as I think I am.
But you're never wrong though.
So, I see, like, I obviously don't know what I'm saying. You know, but it gave me areas that I can think about, like if I'm doing something that I described as being literate and confidence, and then I'm like, but I'm not like, you know, I'm not doing that. I want to be confident, or I want trying to teach my kids how to be like super confident or anything like that. You know, that essay really caused me to evaluate what I find, you know, to be the literacy of confidence or whatever.
And fun, you'll have to share that prompt with all of us then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a cool one.
I liked it, not really essays, but I really enjoyed the free writes that we would do. And Melissa would say, if you're just writing, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, that's what
Eventually you
you're
get
writing, but
something, yeah.
the act of putting pen to paper and having to just write whatever came to mind kind of got you started, you know, so when, more fluid, I guess, when you could write at that point, then it opened it up. And I liked our like motivational letter to ourselves that you sent back to us.
Yeah.
Yes, they know.
Yeah, it was really interesting to get it back and to read like, oh, like I'm doing what I thought I wanted to do or not. I enjoyed that. There were so many. I was trying to think, geez.
As far as the late work goes, I would say yes and no. I would definitely set limits on it. Like maybe 1 or 2 days late, but I've seen, and not only in my English classes, if you just give this open-ended, like, I want you guys to have a good grade, so make sure you bring it in to me, you know, in history classes, health classes, English, the tendency is to wait until like the very last minute, turn in 72 papers and be like, so I'm getting an A, right? Where if you just like, you know, maybe,
Is that an issue? Is that a big?
I found it to be an issue, and I'm having trouble with it because I'm kind of a hard ass, and that I was not allowing any late work, and that seemed to be a problem.
with so many assignments, that can be rough, especially students
Yeah, I
taking
think-
other classes. But if you set a limit, I think on the days, that'd be fair for student
Yeah,
and
like if it's
instructor.
due today, you miss today's class, then you have till tomorrow.
Yeah, I
You
had
know.
1 day, but then I took off 50%.
See, then I would just.
That's
like, yeah.
that's high too, for my experience personally. I don't.
So just give them like a day.
I just figured if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it the next day anyway, or for whatever reason you weren't there and you did it, but you have it, then you're gonna take it. But if you're not gonna do it, then chances are you're gonna wait till the last day and hope that that bumps you up all the way back up, you know,
And
from
then be
failing.
mad at the
I'm
instructor that they
sure-
didn't actually get the A because they just turned in all these assignments, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
think,
letting
I
them
think
know.
Mrs. Long had an excellent way of achieving this. It was through Canvas. We had to turn in a portion of our essay at a certain amount of time, and then another portion, and then the final. That way, everybody has a portion due at a certain time before the final day.
Okay.
And you'd have a peer group as well, anonymous, although I always leave my name on it.
I was gonna say, everybody always left their name on it.
Like, did it again.
I would tell you, actually the last semester I had a fun thing where for the Turnitin peer review assignment, I would have students, because I wanted them to still keep their essays in MLA format, so I would tell them to use a fake name for
Right, there
the
were
name
some
portion,
funny.
and so the fun fake names, I think,
Yeah.
at least it was a little entertaining.
You're like, Jolly Rancher had a great
Yeah, well, I'm like, Mickey Mouse sure did a lot of different essays because he was like everywhere. And I got like 3 Mickey Mouse today. It's amazing.
But
Yeah, is that how, is your curriculum, like you just have, this is one essay, this is when it's due, that's it?
Yeah.
And then you have,
Well, we do a workshop. I did the 73X,
Right,
and then
okay.
we did 101AX. So basically, yeah, you have your rough draft in class, but you
Okay.
have to pen in the workshop or you can't turn in the final.
right.
That's how a lot of
So
instructors
let's
are though, for
move
the
on to
peer
kind of
review, if
more
you don't show up for peer review,
specific to
then.
accelerate it, you know, because
Okay.
that's kind of just a plot, but is there anything maybe more specific to accelerated class?
So you mentioned that with the 3-hour block Brit in particular, I think you mentioned it, that you played a lot of games that got people invested, kept them participating, even though over a longer class period. So what sort of games did you particularly find worked for that?
It is a younger generation oftentimes, so we played water pong, where you throw the ball into the water and instead of beer, it's water, you know, so like a ping pong, and that's for trivia type questions, answering about your reading. We played that little cup thing with the rubber bands, you know what I'm talking about? Where you have to make this little pyramid.
She's good at that, so.
Yeah, it's pretty, you know, like just different stuff like that, or, I don't know, at least once a week there would just be like, I guess I could call them like Pinterest style games, you know, like you go on Pinterest, you find this game for like vocabulary or, you know, anything on Pinterest or the internet, just random styles of games, and anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes just to kind of like get people talking to each other and get people, you know, engaging. It'd be like maybe a day where everyone was really tired. After break, we'd come back and there'd be a game set up. And then all of a sudden you see discussion sparking afterward and different things like that. So really, I mean, just anything, as long as you're in a classroom and you hand out papers to read, it's gonna be like, ugh. But
It's expected.
as soon as you're like, hey, here's this random game that usually
You
5-year-olds
guys do that
play,
one
people
where-
are like,
Yes!
you know,
She
so.
brings these like headband things, and we have a card on her forehead, and she wants you to remember, mind you, this is for all the books throughout the whole entire semester, and it's towards the end of the semester. And here we are, I'm like, this headband's so tight, I can't
Or like the
think.
Price is Right music as you're running around or something.
And I was all like, and you're like trying for the life of you to remember that.
Because it's all literature.
So the way the headbands, and I have to say I stole this from Rachel. So this is Rachel's game that I stole and probably added wacky elements to. But so they would put, they wouldn't know who was on their forehead, and they'd put the card on their forehead, and it would have one of the sources that we've read. So it might have J.S. Mill, or it might have Jeremy Bentham. And so they'd have to ask a question of their group about the person on their forehead to try and figure out who was on their forehead. And I had to make it very clear this cannot be is mine a man? You know, it had to be a yes or no question, but it couldn't be something that was sort of superficial. It had to be a sort of meaty question about happiness and philosophy and things like that. Otherwise, unfortunately, Gretchen Rubin would be singled out. We had very few women just because of the way that when the game fell, and but things like that you couldn't say, did we read me early in the semester, or it doesn't work.
But it was fun, and it was like a 15-minute thing that we had to do, and it just like, Herbie's like, I should have got that right. I should remember this. And I'm like, yeah, well, the game's over, you guys. That you should have thought about that before.
Well,
We
it's
lost.
like sneaky learning, kind of.
Yeah.
You're like, oh.
And it
what?
did, and then it got us ready for the next essay, which was taking, anybody that we've read before to create an essay. And I was like, oh, that's why she did that. Now, and you kind of forget what you
Whichever
read at the
person
beginning.
resonated with you, you're like, well, that's maybe who I should write about.
Yeah, exactly.
Other questions? Emery.
So in the computer part of the 108X, what would be like a typical day in there? What did you do in the computer part?
We still participated as a group. We still did a lot of group activities, but we also did a lot of kind of formatting things out to kind of get that structure going, and then a lot of
Like the next thing that was due,
Yeah.
maybe, like.
So like your homework?
Yeah, like you have the essay number 5 coming up, you should take this bulk of time to do that.
yeah.
Or, if you're ahead on that, which I don't know if anyone ever is, but you could, divvy up your time and do another project, not necessarily maybe on the computer, maybe it's a reading log, but usually it was essays.
So just whatever you choose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of,
or
but.
we also did, like if we had group things, this would be a good time to do it. Like we had a newspaper, we finished our newspaper in that, that amount. We distributed what we knew everybody had to do specific parts. And then the next time we met, everybody had to bring in, and that was our structure thing, like, you have to bring it in the next time. It's not due for 4 weeks. Yeah, you have to bring it in the next time.
Right.
I'm not gonna wait.
Guess what?
Yeah, I'm not gonna wait till the last minute and be like, please tell me that they brought it, and they brought glue to glue it on our paper, so it really did, it helped to kind of like help us stay on track.
Right, but if you, the teacher, you had been discussing something, maybe you would say, this would be a good opportunity for you to take the time to start to work on what we were just talking about now. And then if you have questions, you have the teacher or your other students or the past leader right there.
I would say for my class it varied on when we went to the computer room, how structured that time was. So sometimes we would go there and I would say sort of, here are your options of things you might work on. Other times we would go over and I would say, this is what I'd like for you to work on, and it's due at the end of this class period.
Right.
So you have 45 minutes to write a response to this, and then maybe the homework would have something to do with, or 45 minutes to write the summary, and then your homework is to write a response to that summary, or something like that. So it would vary in terms of the amount of structure that I would give them in that computer time. Any other questions?
So you wouldn't use the 2-hour time to say, here's your in-class writing assignment, you would wait for the X portion, that extra hour? Or did it?
It depended on what it was, yeah.
You maybe start,
So yeah, sometimes you would start in the classroom